All right, we are right at the top of the hour, so we are going to go ahead and get things started. Hello and welcome to everyone on the line. Thank you so much for joining today's Hackett webcast featuring P&G, discussing Costa Rica as a proven partner for the next wave of business optimization solutions. I do see a flurry of attendees just dialing in, likely jumping from their last meeting, so we are going to get started with some housekeeping and some quick introductions while everyone gets settled. And Penny, if you could advance the slide. Thank you. First and foremost, we are recording today's session, so all lines have been muted to ensure that call quality. If you do have any questions for our panelists today, you can submit those via the Q&A feature, or if you need any technical support, you can reach out to myself, the host, using the chat feature, both of which are located in the banner at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We are going to keep an eye on those Q&As. We'll plan to bring those up at the end of our presentation, time permitting. Though anything that we are not able to answer live, we will respond to offline after the event is concluded. If you'd like to view our presentation in full screen mode, you can do so by clicking the arrows in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. The Hackett Group has just launched our 19th annual GBS performance study. If you are interested in seeing how your GBS compares to your peers and to world class, please do reach out to your Hackett account manager and they'll help you get started. The study is open through April 9th. Looking through the first quarter, we have several upcoming virtual events already posted to the Hackett Member Center portal. We'll be featuring guest speakers like Kimberly Clark, who's going to walk us through their evolution of next-gen continuous improvement. We'll also be presenting on master data and governance, how to close the digital skills gap, and many more. So please feel free to register for any sessions that pique your interest. And if you yourself would be interested in presenting on a future Hackett webcast, we'd love to discuss that opportunity with you. We've included more information about the responsibilities and benefits of being a Hackett event presenter here, which we will include in our follow-up materials to be sent after our presentation. You can also find more information about being a speaker in the Hackett Member Center portal under program links in the top right under the Speaker Opportunities section. And the Hackett Group has opened applications for our 2021 Digital Awards. If you're proud of your organization's accomplishments in automation and analytics, we do encourage you to apply for this opportunity to be recognized. The application deadline is Wednesday, March 31st. Today's session is eligible for CPE credit. To receive CPE credit, you are required to be on the line for at least 50 minutes. You will need to participate in both of the polling questions, as well as complete the evaluation survey that's going to pop up in your browser after the presentation has concluded. However, even if you are not attending to receive CPE credit, we do encourage everyone to participate in this quick survey. It does help us continuously improve our webcast. Today's learning objectives are to define the P&G journey undertaken from its beginning to today in their Costa Rica Center, to identify P&G's global footprint and vision for growth in GBS, and finally, to explain the critical drivers that help shape P&G's success with examples of key business deliverables. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to today's speakers to kick off the session. Penny Weller, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Julia, and welcome everyone. We have a very proud and long relationship with the CINDE organization. So any of you that are already in Costa Rica have probably also have a strong partnership with this organization. Again, we're very excited the fact that CINDE did bring today's speaker to us from Procter Gamble. We're delighted to have that speaker with us. And before we do that, I'd like to introduce to you Alvaro Goicoechea, who will be have the honor of introducing our speaker today.
Thank you very much, Penny. And hi, everyone, and thanks for joining into the webinar. For us in CINDE, it's with great pleasure to be able to speak today about one of the most important success stories we have in Costa Rica and frankly, the region itself. I think when we speak about Costa Rica itself, it's imperative to talk about the evolution and the transformation that Procter Gamble has had in the country and the impact itself that has had. A lot of professionals itself have been developed by Procter Gamble. For me, it's also it has a place in my heart as that was the first phase of work for me. So thanks to Procter Gamble for the evolution and development of talent itself. And also not only to be for Procter to be one of the pioneers in the country, but also in terms of setting up their GBS. But I think as well in terms of how they've been evolving and the way that they've been able to become a benchmark, a best in class with their practices. Therefore, we would like to encourage all the attendees to participate in the Q&A session and throughout the presentation, because we think it will be a very useful and a very informative session. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to Andreas Holdsworth, so he can also talk a little bit more about Procter itself. Thank you.
And Andreas, I think you may be on mute. Andreas, can you hear me? I think you may be on mute for your audio. Oh.
Yes, good morning.
There you
Hello,
go.
everybody. As the presentation switched over for me, the mute button actually moved, so apologies for that. Let me flip back quickly to the opening slide. So my name is Andreas Holdsworth. I am the Global Vice President for Financial Planning, Accounting, and Reporting. And as you can probably imagine with P&G, I have gone through a range of assignments before taking the current position. And I'm not going to go through them, but just as a brief journey, I've been in most of the finance and accounting roles that we have within P&G, whether that is in the global business unit, regional business units, what we call market operations and sales organizations. And then for the past few years, I've focused more on the corporate F&A and global business services area, and was responsible for some of the recent company reorganizations in terms of the implementation. What I want to do today is take you through a bit of a historic journey of P&G in Costa Rica, and share with you the successes that we've had, but also very importantly, the evolution we have gone through. Because when we came here, we had probably something very different in mind versus where we are today. As a brief background on P&G, I'm sure everybody is fully aware of the consumer goods industry, and that is where we are playing. We are playing in 10 different categories, and our purpose is really, with our brands, to improve the life of our consumers every day. And we have really changed, a bit our strategy over the years to go very deliberate into products that do that. And today we have 21 brands that are above 1 billion sales each, in some cases up to 10 billion. And we have about another 11 brands in our portfolio that is between 500 million and 1 billion in sales. And a lot of them are of course, still fast growing. So in terms of the structure on how we bring those 10 categories to the market, we're structured in sector business units which own the mid long-term development of our brands and our products. And they also own the go-to-market in what we call the focus markets. And we then have a second unit, which is the enterprise markets, which are basically taking the portfolio provided by those sector business units and take that and run a portfolio that is fit to their markets. And so in that sense, they have more autonomy on the business decision making and can obviously react faster to consumer needs and therefore drive faster growth. And underpinning that is global business services and some very specific specialized corporate resources that support the go-to-market as well as their development. The bulk of our business is in focus markets, but of course, we are looking for faster than average growth rates in our enterprise markets. In terms of how Global Business Service is supporting those business units and market operations, we have 5 big strategies as a company, and those apply to all the business units, and it's really about, superior products, sustainable and irresistible packaging, et cetera. And so GBS is really very deliberate in making sure that we have links into all those strategies. So we are not just a back office service in that sense, but we are actively involved in helping the business units to drive those strategies. Think about procurement, for example, when it comes to the packaging, or other areas like the digital and IT space, where we are supporting with the scale that we have various different business units on their go-to-markets. The other plank that Global Business Services in P&G is obviously delivering excellent results is on the productivity. And that is both on upskilling and making sure we have people that are capable to deliver and support the business of today as things are evolving very fast, but also to deliver significant productivity to the company, which we can then use to reinvest into the base business, into our brands, and into future growth and future categories. Global Business Services in P&G is a very centralized organization with several different service lines, and I'm going to talk a bit about those service lines in a couple of slides. We do have 3 main hubs globally, and we put those hubs into place back in '99. And that's also when basically our presence in Costa Rica started. And so between Manila, Newcastle, and San Jose, and obviously P&G is headquartered in Cincinnati, we are able to provide support 24/5 and in some cases 24/7 where needed. And in terms of the global footprint, depending on the service, we would be really following, either following the sun or actually even in some cases, running ahead to some extent to be able to support the business in all those different services. We do have
Thank you, Andreas. We're going to take a quick polling question now for our CPE requirement. So the question to our attendees is, what is the level of maturity of your GBS shared services journey? So just select the one that best suits you. Are you in the exploratory phase, implementation, stabilization, process improvement, or expanding your services offering? So we'll leave the poll open for about 15 more seconds while people wrap up their answers. Looks like just a handful more. Okay, and the poll is now closed. And Penny, you should see the results.
All right, thank you. Well, probably no surprise. I think this is the reward for doing good work. You get more of it, and certainly for the responses that we're having here. I also appreciate that many of you are in the stage of process improvement. So process improvement, continuous improvement, all of that certainly shows the kind of state of where we are as a GBS world today. So that's very good feedback. Andreas, any comment from you?
No, I think, it is good to see that a lot of the audience is indeed, fairly high up the curve. And so I think, some of the next slides in terms of expanding services offering hopefully gives you some inspirations. I'm sure some of you are very advanced as well, but we do take pride at P&G that, we are pioneering some of the services, but we can always learn from each other as well. So looking good, thank you. I want to talk next after that general overview of P&G and GBS, more specifically about our beginnings in San Jose and why we have chosen Costa Rica at the time and since have expanded significantly. So back in 1998, P&G decided to pursue a global business services model. And we were looking back then at about 120 cities around the world for locations. And we ended up initially debating whether we would do 3 to 5 locations. We were believing we would potentially need a separate one for North America versus Latin America. But in the end, our search basically landed on Manila, Newcastle, and San Jose, which is, you know, what I had seen on the previous slide. And as part of that sighting study, we realized that San Jose was often offering such a huge amount of English-speaking capability of very trained people that we then decided already back then in 1998 to serve North America and Latin America out of Costa Rica. As you can see, you know, when we came, it was a greenfield site. The services industry was almost non-existent. There were probably less than 1,000 people and less than a handful of companies that were working in that sector. But then, you know, over time, I think, you know, what we found was really a realization for many. And so we stayed and we expanded over the time because of all those items that I've listed on here, right? It is a very well-educated population. So we do get a very good pipeline from both universities as well as technical high schools. There was a lot of focus and some historic choices really to channel the money into education versus military. The English capability, as I've already mentioned, that we find is very strong and is a must, of course, not only to operate between the service centers, but also with our biggest business for P&G in North America. And you know, the focus has shifted, and I will show you that in the journey of our service center. But the focus has really shifted on, you know, from F&A to IT and broader and broader skill sets that we are asking. And you know, we are finding the talent that we need to support our growth and to support our new services. And so, you know, I think all of the drivers that made us choose Costa Rica have actually gotten stronger and stronger over the years. And that's why we have maintained the growth, and we are now actually the biggest of those 3 sites in terms of headcount. You know, I alluded to it just now, you know, but we are proud that we are amongst the pioneers in Costa Rica, and thanks Alvaro for, you know, for the opening on that. But you know, that's history. And so I think really, you know, you see the evolution of the services sector. It's now about 190 companies. It is a significant employment factor for the country with about 80,000 people. And, you know, as we started, we also brought in, you know, thankfully, some of the big companies like HP, IBM, Infosys, that we needed for the success of our startup decided to follow early on and have also been growing since. And I'm sure many of you that are already here are also working closely with them. But it really has been an amazing growth story. And what we have found, you know, ideal conditions in that sense to continue growing our services and directly and indirectly, you know, contributing to the growth of the sector. I'm going to zoom in now in our, you know, current demographics because I'm sure that might be of interest. And I'll just cover a few of the, you know, general aspects. Feel free to ask questions later on. But you know, the key items you know, factors we are looking at is really, you know, gender diversity. And that is for our site at exact 50-50. We have some work to do depending on functions or, you know, certain levels, but overall we have made, you know, excellent progress on a measure that is important for P&G as a whole, and of course for us as GBS. In terms of the organization structure, the average age is 32 years old with 8 years of experience. So we are not a totally new, as you would expect, organization, but we have a good mix of new and experienced and mature experts. And as I was mentioning, we are now at 1,600 employees, and with that, we are actually the biggest of the service centers between Newcastle, Manila, and San Jose. And what we are very proud of is that our experts and our local talent is recognized and is actually moving out as well for assignments, which of course makes us stronger as a site over time as we get hands-on business experience, expats returning, and we do send talent to not only North America and Latin America, but actually also to Europe and Asia, into other service centers, but also very frequently into business units or product supply finance organizations. In terms of the functions, you can see that we are evolving as a site. We are continuously, reinventing ourselves, I would say. And you see that here in the functional split, and it'll get very well illustrated on the next slide, where you will see how our service offering has evolved over time. We also operate with very few expats, as you can see there. It's a very low population, and we are really relying on Costa Rican talent almost entirely. Excuse me. This slide summarizes the current scope. And if you think about our journey, we started probably with those two little boxes at the bottom on the left in 1998. Our scope vision back then was really about financial services, very basic accounting, a little bit of payroll, but a fairly narrow vision. And as you can see, we have really expanded over time. And so I'll quickly give you a couple of examples of the different areas. Our financial purchasing services and solutions would basically cover the whole P2P procurement to pay operations, including the banking portion. External compliance would be anything on indirect taxes, local financial statements, local GAAP, local direct taxes. Financial planning, accounting, and reporting is the entire US GAAP, but also management reporting for all the business units and all the associated systems. We have then, after that, started evolving on the product supply shared services, which was not really in scope in our first decade, I would say. But over the last decade, since 2010, 2012, we have taken on and grown significantly in the area of product supply services. And I'll give you two examples afterwards, one from the accounting service line and one from the planning service center in terms of the scope that we've been adding over the years. But as you can see, there's the planning for demand as well as supply as well as production is centralized here for Latin America. And we have various other groups, including product supply IT support, end-to-end master data. As you can all appreciate, it all starts with good master data. Otherwise, we all suffer downstream. And so that was clearly an opportunity to centralize and optimize. And GBS was in the very best position, to take on that challenge within P&G. Employee services and solutions had been there on a small scale since the very beginning as well. So even back in '99, we started up with some of those operations. So think payroll, think travel accounting, the entire benefits administration. But we have then grown over time and taken on real estate work, anything on facilities, et cetera, and are managing a lot of that actually for the globe out of San Jose. So in some of those, we really have the global ownership. And then one of the more recent additions has been corporate IT. So we have been adding quite a lot of IT capability that is either embedded in some of those service offerings down here, but we also have now a really standalone corporate IT group looking really at the next generation. Cloud operations for P&G is managed out of San Jose, et cetera. So, so in summary, you can really see that when we talk GBS, we have changed our definition of that over time, and we keep expanding. And as we, deliver productivity on one area, we basically attract new services and take next services to the next level. And we have been able to do that. We have been very deliberate in upskilling our existing population, and have been able to absorb a lot of those new offerings over time with the population that we have. And so I think that's something close to our heart, because obviously we don't want to create redundancies, but at the same time it forces capability building as an organization and as individuals. I put that slide in because, of course, with all those services, there is different deliverables. But I think those are probably the universal ones. So you would have, strong KPIs of whatever is relevant for the business unit or service that we had on the previous slide. But then the balance of the items is really about culture, mindset, and business model of GBS. So productivity is really ingrained in all we do. We try to make things better. We try to make things cheaper, faster, automate, and I'll show you a few examples. Strong stewardship or governance and compliance is obviously core. If you think to some of the areas, but even data integrity for business decision making, it's really going through every single service that we have. We are proud of the culture that we have created in terms of challenging the status quo, improving things, having that mindset, what we call growth mindset, to change things and improve things. And then the last piece is on the one hand, it's the value-added strategy really. We need to keep innovating, and we need to be able to innovate with what we have, but also show our customers on what else we can do. And so we can't stand still, and especially in the digital space, there's lots of opportunities, but we need to be very deliberate and focused on reaping the benefits from that. And I think this summarizes a bit what I just described, right? It's evolving, so that the bullet points don't necessarily change, but the historical model that we were following was, you bring in a service, call it accounts receivable, from many countries because it was typically decentralized before. And then we automate, optimize it, we restructure how we do things, and then potentially some of the operational task-driven jobs, we would then either through automation or through additional offshoring, put, for instance, in our Manila service center, when it comes to very much task-driven operations. And, that model still exists, and we still continue driving that. But now we are much more focused on earlier on in the design process. So we are not just optimizing what we receive, we are really driving a lot of the innovation. And so we would be, we just recently introduced S4 for the globe, effective July last year. Our fiscal year is July, June. And we did that within the pandemic remotely on top of, all the other things and not dropping anything. And those kind of transformations are only possible, if you have a very, very strong, thinking, capable population. And, we've very successfully managed through that big transition, to give you one example. We also, see opportunities through some of the historical items, but some of the digital innovation to shrink our front office support and to digitize some of that, get to more self-serve, and really are focused very much on good user experience. I'm sure all of you have been frustrated sometimes by your own services, and so we really try also as leaders of the service lines to learn and to get to the best possible experiences, and that typically drives quite a bit of change and productivity as well. And then of course, maintain global standardization is key. You have still, even after such a long journey, some local applications, sometimes needed, sometimes not. And so there's still very much, future potential for us in that space. I'll give you two examples before I quickly talk about our site culture and our action plan. One is some work we did a couple of years ago, really on the accounting month-end close. So, we operate in most countries of the world. I don't know if somebody is clicking for me because I'm not touching. So we basically embarked on an accounting month-end close optimization. It was a process with, since we operate in so many categories, we produce essentially all our products ourselves. So we have a huge amount of plants and distribution centers, and we operate in most countries or sell in most countries on Earth. And so our accounting process was, very lengthy, lots of steps, not necessarily always standard because we came more from a regional history. And so over time, we really focused on standardizing that a lot. And as you can see there between the, it was a journey of 4 years, but on the standardization, we went from really low figures to almost 97%. We managed to eliminate a lot of the steps along the way. So we simplified. And then we basically took that and started to automate. And as you can see today, the number is even lower, but we basically went from 100 people being involved in the accounting month-end close full-time to about 35. And we also got faster, which allowed us to report earnings earlier and without compromising on quality, of course. So we have done a lot of that, and you would have examples in every single service where we drove significant standardization, which would then usually allow automation, deliver value, productivity, earlier data, better data, and greater transparency. I'll also have an example from the planning service center. So we used to have 300 planning locations globally because essentially it was decentralized between every plant, every distribution center, every sales organization would do part of the planning. And in Latin America alone, we had almost 50. Today, as I was saying, the planning service center within our site is doing everything from raw and pack planning and buying to the manufacturing, to the distribution, to the customization, to the final shipment to our trade partners or distributors. And that has, as you can imagine, had not only productivity, but it got much faster, much more agile, a lot more right first time, because you now have a scale and a capability to do things in a very, very different way. And we have that set up now since about 5 years, and it just continues improving. And especially during the pandemic, we really saw the power of this because we were able to, as demand in our cleaning products in fabric and home care or healthcare products spiked, we were able to react much faster than we would have been able to ever react in a decentralized setup. As a site, and I'm just almost closing, I just wanted to briefly talk to you how we think about site versus service lines. So we are running global service lines. As I was saying, I own financial planning, accounting, and reporting globally. And so as a site and as a center, we really focus on mastery and capability at the core, having the skills for all those service lines to be able to supply them with what they need. Obviously, business results are an imperative, but we also spend a lot of time and effort on upskilling and training our employees, which implicitly leads to the best place to work. We really want a vibrant and a living and an outspoken culture that is innovative, but we also take our corporate responsibility very serious. And so my activities as site leader are really focused on supporting those elements, which then benefit, all the different service lines across. And, I'm not going to go through this, but these are basically our action plan pillars underneath to support exactly that. And that has really enabled us to, with this huge shift in skill needs, with this huge shift in services, to always be ready to, absorb and deliver a new service with excellence over the years. A lot of that has been, recognized externally. And so, if you think about those same pillars, we have been very successful, and it's very close to our heart, is the environmental sustainability. And Costa Rica is obviously leading as a country on that. It's a, it's a very sustainably thinking country. And I've been, I come from Germany. We've always been proud in terms of how early we started recycling. I think we can learn a lot from Costa Rica when it comes to, the overall sustainability. Community impact, we try, to support the communities we live and work in around the globe. And our efforts in Costa Rica are no different. And we, also try to step that up even more, even though we were remote during the pandemic. And then, of course, equality and inclusion. We have had some very successful programs, which, I can share at another stage if you're interested. But we've been really focused beyond the business results on these areas, and it has been, externally recognized. So in summary, and then we are going to move over to Q&A. I think it's very straightforward, but what I told you is really, we try to invest a lot in our people, but the people we find are extremely capable. And so when I moved here 2 years ago from Geneva, from our commercial headquarters for EIMEA, I was really impressed by the quality of people and the quality of skills that I found. We are looking for synergies across. Some of our definitions of functions and skills is outdated, and we all know that. So we are trying to look a lot to leverage the different experiences that you saw on those, on those slides, because we can learn a lot from each other. Operational excellence is an imperative in the industry that we are in, of course, but we also try to, innovate and accelerate, as I was saying. And so those are really, the 5 things that we believe we need to pursue and drive to be ready today and for the future. And we are looking forward to do that here in Costa Rica, where we've had very good conditions, and you can imagine that this journey that I've taken you on wouldn't have been possible without focus, but of course very much a good infrastructure, good capability, employees, and so on. So I hope this was helpful for you, and I'm gonna pass it on to Julia for the Q&As, and I'm happy to take yours.
Thank you so much, Andreas. Before we hit the Q&A, we do have our second and final poll question for our CPE requirement. We are interested to know, what are your GBS SSD location priorities? We've listed out a few options here. You can select multiple, so as you read down the list, go ahead and select whichever apply to you, and be sure to submit your answer to receive the CPE credit.
And Andreas, as they're completing the last poll question, number one, thank you for sharing this exceptional journey. Obviously a lot and very well respected on a global basis. So we're excited to get those Q&As coming after we close the poll. So a big special thank you to you.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
Got just a handful of attendees wrapping up their responses. We'll give it about 10 more seconds. All right, just a couple more. And the poll is now closed. Penny, you should see the results.
Okay, oh my, we're tied for first place. Look at that. Technology and cost kind of go hand in hand across the board. I love the business continuity because with COVID and all the extra attention that's been focused on backup continuity planning, to have that ranked very high is certainly critical. So any comments you would have on that, Andreas, before we turn over to general questions?
No, I think, all of those are high on the priority list. I saw one question, I'm not exactly sure, but I guess it's value versus cost. And we are not saturated. As I was alluding to earlier, we do have a very cost-efficient operation in Manila, but it is not at the same capability level. And if I think about, for instance, some of the global project manager roles that we have, they would be skewed towards San Jose. So, value versus cost is always a consideration, obviously, and cost is important, but it's really, you need to be very granular on that cost comparison because, some of the cost might be higher, but it's the value that is being driven. But as a total organization, of course, cost is a focus for us.
Okay, thank you so much.
If that didn't answer the question, please rephrase. Because I was not sure what you mean by saturation, because we don't see an end, on productivity. It is just using the whole toolkit between automation, digitization, offshoring, new ways of doing things. But we don't really see an end there, and we have a good track record. It's the company counts on GBS to deliver year in, year out productivity, and we do deliver since 20 years.
Thank you so much, Andreas. Let's see. We've had a couple more questions come in. As a reminder to all of our attendees on the line, as your questions come to mind for our panelists today, you can submit those via the Q&A icon at the bottom banner of your Zoom screen. So first question up on the list, how do you stay connected to the business to ensure they see and leverage the GBS value?
Yeah, so there's various ways, of course. If I take my example, I speak regularly to the business unit finance heads, as well as corporate tax, corporate forecast, and all the people that I'm serving. And that's true also on the working level, obviously. And most of our projects, when it comes to the early design, we work very closely with them to be very clear on the business requirements. On the going operations, it is of course mainly on the KPIs that I was mentioning. It's about right first time, data integrity, the speed, the usefulness of the reports, and so we do have different tools really to stay in touch, which range from collaboration, communication to scorecards. And all of that, of course, involves including the targets that we would agree for certain periods or for certain areas, depending on the business focus. The other, implicit area that I was mentioning is we try to send top talent out into business roles. So they do, it's a limited amount of the population, but we try to send, the future leaders with potential out for business roles. So they, firsthand experience what it is like, and they then, later on can better serve the needs also of our business partners. Did labor costs go up when other countries entered the market? Yes, labor costs go up, but that's true for, I think, any service center hub, where you have a lot of entrants and where you compete for talent. It depends also a bit by level, as I was alluding to. So if you have very experienced, globally capable project managers, for example, they might have a slightly different cost over time than an entry level. We do find, entry level and lower level management job to be very cost competitive. And so, yes, it has gone up, but, I actually need to deliver my productivity net of salary inflation. And so my target is always, whatever salary inflation is, I need to offset it. And so, yes, it's a reality. There is increased wages, but there's also increased skills as our population mix is changing, and some of the lower task-driven jobs do get automated. It is a combination, but the decision rights are lying with the organization unit. And so if, if I want to bring in, I'll pick an example that we've already done, accounts receivable for North America, that would be, I can pitch for bringing that in, and I can, do pilots to show the value, but the business unit, in this case, the North American market operations, they are the decision maker. So it's not that they would be forced by corporate or anybody. So I truly need to compete on, versus their existing service and versus their existing cost. So, I think strategic direction is there, but I need to compete for every single service that I will bring in as a site or as a service line. Do you see? Yes, we do see a robust talent pool, and to be fair, we also invest significantly in talent as we bring it in. Most of you or some of you might know we are a promotion from within company, so we do hire externally, but very selectively at higher levels, really based on some missing skill needs or evolving skills. But we would tend to grow our own talent, and hence, we have an extensive selection process, but we then also invest in the growth of our people and build those capabilities. In terms of turnover, our turnover and attrition is significantly below the market. But of course, we do see turnover, but it's usually, depending on either certain new services arriving or some companies getting to a certain maturity level. But I mean, it is very manageable for us in general. There's several ways to do that. Obviously, there are some roundtables, like organized by CINDE, for example. The American Chamber of Commerce, in our case, as an American company, is also organizing quite a bit. I mean, we're not necessarily in direct competition. So in some of the social programs. We would be cooperating with other sites to amplify our impact to certain social causes or sustainability causes. We also do benchmarking with other companies. Obviously, from a product point of view, it would be non-competes, but from a service center point of view, we can still then go ahead and do benchmarking. And other than that, I think there is, of course, the scale that we now have as an industry, which should help us to further advance the infrastructure, and get the right talent out of universities for our needs, et cetera, et cetera. So influence, really based on the needs and the growth, the stakeholders in the community. So I hope that answered, Michael. Unless you had something more specific in mind, then please, shoot me another question.
And you can also include questions in the chat for the CINDE organization, because Alvaro and others are available.
All right.
Other questions, Julia? I've gotten a few here if you've run out.
Yeah, I think we've answered the ones from my feed. Why don't you go ahead with yours, Penny, that came in?
Okay, thank you. To what extent do you offer administrative support to executives? Is that a service that you provide through the GBS?
No, that is not a service we are providing through GBS. So, I mean, the executive support in P&G is actually fairly limited. I think we have gotten used to using our services very much. And so we have significantly, in the business units and in the markets, reduced executive assistants over time. And a lot of it is self-serve. Now, of course, they still exist, but in that sense, we don't do local support. We do support it indirectly through a lot of reporting, and simplified processes when it comes to organizational changes, et cetera, if that's what you mean. But we are not doing local executive assistant support.
Okay. Another question I received was, do you have a global contact center that covers the majority of the services you provide?
Well, each service would basically have a contact, but depending on the service, we really look for interoperability between, Manila, Newcastle, and San Jose. And so it doesn't matter where you sit and in which time zone, we would receive your request and support it. So literally all our services are 24/5. And as I was saying at the beginning, in some, cases that require weekend support, we would do 24/7.
Great. Considering COVID, what impact has that had on the GBS brand? Are you getting more work because of the great service you've offered in the past?
Yeah,
that's a good reward.
That is a good reward. So I think, first of all, I think the fact that we could operate completely remotely has convinced probably the last skeptics. Okay, so independent of whatever they might have thought, I think that has taken it to a whole new level. We do have since then started conversations on additional work to bring that in, but it's obviously a balancing act because, as I was saying, depending on some of the categories, for instance, they are really shipping beyond their capacity, and we are on allocation on some of our products. And so depending on the area, we are just cautious, but I'm confident we'll bring in additional work as a result of that. But, we'll need to do more planning and to be able to, get the commitment. But there is interest, and there has been interest, before COVID. So I really just think, some of those plans require a bit of, thinking through as also the sending organizations are to the largest extent still operating remotely.
Okay. To what extent do you use a liquid workforce to augment peaks in work? Do you have a liquid or a fluid workforce arrangement?
Well, so within our workforce, we do, depending on the area, definitely flow to the work. There are some, capability boundaries because not everybody is expert in everything. But if I take, for instance, the month-end flows as still a peak period, even though, or even, after all the things we've done, we do flow to the work during those periods from other groups. So in that sense, yes, but we are not operating with a, call it central pool that would then go to all the different units. For that, if we truly have those peak situations, we would often work with external partners, to supply us some labor for some peaks or for some special situations.
Okay, I've got one more here on employee suggestions and continuous improvement. Are there a minimum number of ideas that employees are expected to submit annually? How are they recognized and rewarded?
Yeah, no, so we don't have a mandatory requirement for employees to, for each employee to submit improvement ideas. What we do have is, quite a lot of, different activities. One we call the Jedi program, which is more about, getting to the next level and identifying improvements. Some others, it's really activity-based, I would say, to keep the continuous flow. And we package that sometimes with, rewards, sometimes with more like, a gamification type of approach. But as I was saying, the culture is really one by now that is focused on improvements. And so in the example of the S4 implementation, that was heavy lifting in a pandemic situation. But since then, I've already more suggestions on how to improve the month end and the reporting than I can even handle in the next 6 to 12 months. And so it is very much ingrained in the culture by now, but that is a journey. And we do have on top, a reward system that where, you can as a manager or as a leader reward those ideas. But we don't have a mandatory requirement by employees. But we have never faced an issue of too few ideas and even too few breakthrough ideas, I think. So.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Those are all the questions that came through directly to me. So again, thank you so much. Julia, any final closing?
Yeah, there are a couple more questions, Penny.
Okay.
That, if you want me to quickly take them in the last minute. On the supply planning, at this stage, it's Latin America that we are running out of San Jose. Some of the challenges I see in the new world, I think the redefining the sweet spot on, work from home and work in the office to make sure that, for innovation, ideation, breakthrough ideas, I think we'll need some office time, but that can be look different by team. And so I think, figuring out that will be a challenge. We already had a very open work from home policy. So quite a few people, or the largest part of the population was 2 or 3 days work from home before the pandemic, which also helped us a lot, by the way, to, go into operation from 1 second to the other. But we'll need to find the sweet spot between, what type of work should happen at the office. How do we make sure we then have the critical mass of that team in the office on that day versus everybody picking? But in the end, it's fairly practical, questions, and it's just a matter of organizing. But, I'm convinced we need the mix, and we just need to find the sweet spot, and that can be different by team and different over time. Automations, it depends, is the answer. We do have quite a few experts, some self-trained, with support, of course, on NIME and Blue Prism and things like that. But we also have, bigger automation initiatives where we would be working with IT or with some vendors at times. So there's not one size fits all on that. It depends on the size and the scope of the automation. Yes, the answer is yes. It's consumer insights, but also digital marketing, and I think that's an area where we still have more opportunities too.
Okay, thank you so much, Andreas. That wraps up all of the questions, all of the many questions. Oh, we've got one more that just slipped in.
Yes, we do operate and cooperate really with some strategic partners globally. So it's not a location-driven thing, really. It's more, depending on the service and the needs. But we do have third-party vendors, obviously, and in many cases, we would really consider them strategic partners that contribute something to our service that wouldn't be as easy to do in-house.
Perfect. We are 1 minute over time, so I'm going to go ahead and say for our wonderfully engaged attendees, thank you so much for your participation on the line. If you do have additional questions, go ahead and send them in and we'll respond offline, but that does cover everything that's come in so far. Andreas, thank you so much for presenting on today's session. Any closing remarks before we wrap the webcast?
No, thank you, for the opportunity, and I hope it's helpful. And to the participants, if you have any questions, we're happy to, to answer and share our experiences. As you can see, I'm very positive on where we are. It's always more work to do and, more innovation to find and new ideas, but I'm very confident that we'll continue doing that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Penny, any final remarks before I close the webcast?
Thank you, everyone. In the wrap-up, you will get some extra materials about the CINDE organization. A special thank you for coordinating today's call. It's been a pleasure, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, everyone.
All right, thank you so much. And with that, thank you for joining today's Hackett webcast. For our attendees on the line, as you exit out of the Zoom, you're going to see that survey pop up in your browser. Again, we do encourage everyone to provide feedback, but that evaluation is a requirement to receive your CPE credit. And as a reminder, if you'd be interested in presenting on a future Hackett webcast, we would love to discuss that opportunity with you. As you're going through that survey, you're going to see an option to check a box. If you'd be interested in being a presenter, go ahead and check that box and we will follow up with you from there. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day. This does conclude today's Hackett webcast.